The stasis pod hissed open after 300 years of silence. Captain Elowen Voss blinked against the harsh light, her muscles atrophied, but her mind racing with perfect clarity. The emergency revival protocol had activated. Something had gone catastrophically wrong. Status report, she croaked, her voice unused for centuries. The ship's AI remained silent. Elowen pulled herself from the pod, gravity immediately dragging her to the metal floor. She caught herself against the edge, cursing as her weakened limbs trembled. The Artemis, humanity's final exodus vessel, was designed to reach the colony world Proxima Centauri b with 10,000 colonists. But the cryo bay stretched before her in eerie silence, every other pod dark and empty. Diagnostics, she commanded, staggering toward the command console. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the impossible. The Artemis had been boarded. Alien script scrolled across the screen, interspersed with human language translation markers. Year 2739. Subject, final human specimen. Status, preserved for historical study. Historical study? Elowen whispered, her blood running cold. She wasn't a captain anymore. She was a specimen, a relic, an exhibit. The ship shuddered as somewhere, a docking procedure commenced. They were coming for her now. Elowen glanced down at her trembling hands, then back at the console. The Artemis had been retrofitted with alien technology, but core protocols remained. She had minutes, perhaps seconds. Her fingers flew across the interface, bypassing security measures. The translation matrix gave her insight into the aliens, the Vrexians, a hyper-advanced species that had encountered the drifting Artemis decades ago and studied humans like laboratory specimens. The fate of her crew and the other colonists was documented in clinical detail: dissection, experimentation, and preservation. Elowen's jaw clenched as she accessed the ship's auxiliary systems. She wasn't just any soldier. She was the captain of humanity's last hope, genetically enhanced with the Chimera Protocol, designed to ensure human survival at any cost. The door to the cryo bay hissed open. 3 Vrexians entered, tall, insectoid, creatures with iridescent exoskeletons and compound eyes. Their mandibles clicked in what appeared to be surprise. Subject is conscious, one chirped in its native tongue, the translation flowing through the ship's speakers. Alert the archivist, Elowen's muscles burned as her augmentations began to activate, Chimera Protocol responding to the threat. Her vision sharpened, time seeming to slow as combat algorithms calculated trajectories and vulnerabilities. "I am Captain Elowen Voss of the Earth Alliance," she declared, her voice finding its strength, "and I am not your specimen." The Vrexians reached for devices on their belts, but Elowen was already moving. 3 centuries in stasis couldn't erase decades of combat training enhanced by genetic modification. She crossed the distance in a heartbeat, her body remembering what her mind had forgotten. The first alien fell before it could raise its weapon. The second managed to fire, a beam of energy that singed Elowen's shoulder as she twisted aside. She drove her elbow into its thorax, feeling the exoskeleton crack beneath the enhanced force of her blow. The third backed away, frantically speaking into a communication device. Elowen seized a surgical tool from a nearby tray and flung it with deadly precision. The alien collapsed, its communication cut short. Breathing heavily, Elowen accessed the nearest terminal. She needed information, weapons, and a plan. The Artemis's databanks contained everything the Vrexians had learned about humanity, including their extinction. Earth was gone. The colony ships destroyed or captured. The human species cataloged and preserved in alien museums across the galaxy. Except for her. "I am not the last human specimen," Elowen whispered, accessing the ship's genetic repository, still intact after all these centuries. "I am the first of the resurgence." The Vrexian ship's alarm began to sound. They knew their exhibit had awakened. They had no idea what they had unleashed. The Vrexian vessel Eternal Taxonomy dwarfed the Artemis, engulfing the human ship within its cavernous docking bay. Elowen moved silently through maintenance shafts, her body still adjusting to movement after centuries of stasis. The Chimera Protocol continued its work, repairing atrophied muscle tissue and enhancing her senses. She had armed herself with a retrofitted pulse rifle, human design, modified with Vrexian technology. Ironic that their scientific curiosity about human weapons would now be turned against them. Alawan reached a junction and paused, listening to the chittering communications of Vrexian security teams sweeping the Artemis. They were methodical, treating her as a valuable specimen to be recaptured rather than an enemy combatant. Their mistake. A holographic map flickered on her wrist device, a neural interface she'd salvaged from the cryobay. The Artemis was merely one exhibit in a vast collection of artifacts from extinct species. The thought turned her stomach. How many civilizations had the Vrexians cataloged and preserved after their demise? "Specimen displays unusual tactical awareness," came a voice from nearby. Alawan froze as a Vrexian scientist addressed a security team. The Human Military Enhancement Program, Chimera Protocol, appears to have preserved significant combat functionality. Exercise extreme caution. Acknowledged, Archivist Kazel, responded a deeper voice. Containment teams are deploying paralytic gas through the ventilation systems. Elowen smiled grimly. The Vrexians had studied humans extensively, but they'd missed something crucial about the Chimera Protocol. It was designed to adapt. Her lungs were already processing the foreign compound, rendering it harmless. She checked her map again. The Eternal Taxonomy contained something far more valuable than the Artemis, a genetics laboratory with advanced cloning technology. If the data in the Artemis's computers was correct, the Vrexians had preserved complete genetic samples of thousands of humans. A plan formed in her mind, audacious, perhaps impossible, but the only hope for humanity's resurrection. She needed to reach that laboratory. The security team rounded the corner, 6 Vrexian soldiers armed with stun weapons. Alawan didn't hesitate. She fired 3 rapid pulses, dropped flat as return fire sizzled overhead, then rolled to a new position. The Vrexians moved with practiced coordination, but they weren't soldiers, not truly. They were curators, scientists, collectors. Alawan was a weapon forged in humanity's final desperate years. She eliminated the security team efficiently, then accessed their communication devices. The Vrexian language was complex, but the ship's translation matrix helped her decipher their security protocols. The archivist, Kazel, was coordinating the hunt for her from the central collection chamber. "Attention all collection staff," Alawan transmitted in flawless Vrexian speech patterns. "Human specimen contained. Security Team Alpha 9 requires assistance with transfer in Section 42. She continued forward as her false message drew Vrexians away from her actual position. The Eternal Taxonomy was a labyrinth of preserved artifacts and biological specimens from across the galaxy. In one chamber, she passed the remnants of a civilization she didn't recognize, massive crystalline beings preserved in stasis fields. In another, the reconstructed habitat of what appeared to be aquatic intelligences, all extinct. All studied and catalogued by the Vrexians. Alawan reached the primary laboratory complex and paused at the entrance. Inside, 3 Vrexian scientists worked at genetic sequencing stations. Behind them, in a vast cylindrical chamber, thousands of DNA samples glowed in preservation fields, the complete genetic library of humanity. One of the scientists looked up as she entered, mandibles flaring in alarm. The specimen. Alawan fired a stun pulse, dropping all 3 Vrexians before they could trigger alarms. She stepped over their unconscious forms and approached the genetic repository. Each glowing vial contained the essence of a human being, all that remained of her species. "Not for much longer," she murmured, accessing the laboratory systems. A new alert blared through the ship. Her deception had been discovered. "Attention all personnel," came the voice of Archivist Xel. "The human military specimen has accessed the genetic repository. This is now classified as a Level 1 security breach. Lethal force authorized." Alawan worked quickly, transferring the genetic data to a portable device while programming the cloning systems. She wouldn't have time to create new humans here. but she could ensure the genetic material survived for a future opportunity. The laboratory doors slid open. Elowen spun, weapon raised, then froze. The Vrexian that entered wasn't like the others. Its exoskeleton bore elaborate markings and cybernetic enhancements gleamed at joints and along its spine. Most shocking of all, it wore a modified human military insignia. Captain Voss, the Vrexian said in perfect English. I am Archivist, Xel, and there is something about humanity's extinction you should know. We did not destroy humanity, Archivist Xel said, compound eyes fixed on Elowen. We preserved what remained after your own apocalypse. Elowen kept her weapon trained on the Vrexian's central mass. You expect me to believe that? I've seen your specimens, humans dissected and displayed like insects. Those were already dead when we found them, Xel replied, mandibles clicking softly. The Artemis was the last functioning colony vessel we discovered. By then, the extinction event had already consumed your homeworld and colonies. Elowen's enhanced senses detected no deception, but after centuries of Vrexian study, they might have learned to fool human perception. What extinction event? Xel gestured, and a holographic display materialized between them. Earth appeared, first vibrant and blue, then rapidly deteriorating as nanoplagues spread across its surface. The timeline accelerated, showing desperate launches of colony ships including the Artemis. The desolation, Xel explained. A weaponized nanoplague that evolved beyond its creator's control. It consumed organic matter at the molecular level, but worse, it learned to transfer itself through transmitted signals. Your own emergency beacons carried it from Earth to your colonies. Elowen's grip on her weapon tightened. If that's true, why keep me in stasis for 3 centuries? Why experiment on my crew? Study, not experimentation, Xel corrected. We are archivists, Captain Voss. We preserve what would otherwise be lost forever. The Vrexian Consortium exists to document galactic civilization. When we found evidence of the Chimera Protocol in your genetic structure, we hope to understand it, to preserve the pinnacle of human military science. The laboratory doors hissed open again. More Vrexians entered, not soldiers but scientists, each bearing insignia indicating different specialties. They maintained a respectful distance, observing the exchange with evident fascination. If you're preservationists, not conquerors, Elowen challenged, then help me restore my species. Xel's posture changed, mandibles lowering in what she interpreted as regret. The desolation persists, Captain. Any cloned human would be vulnerable. Even you carry dormant nanomachines in your cellular structure, held in check only by your chimera enhancements. Elowen processed this revelation. If true, it explained the specialized containment protocols she'd observed in the Artemis's systems. Then why wake me at all? Not our doing, Xel said. Your stasis pod initiated emergency revival when our systems detected something unprecedented. The Vrexian activated another holographic display. 3 days ago, we received this transmission. The hologram showed a military-grade communication beacon, unmistakably human in design. Its signal pulsed steadily. Impossible, Elowen whispered. All colony ships were accounted for in your records. Not all, Xel corrected. One vessel was never found, the UES Prometheus, launched in secret during the final days, carrying specialized military personnel and experimental technology. The only ship equipped with complete Chimera protocol, implementation for all crew members, hope flared in Elowen's chest. Where? The signal originates from the Tau Ceti system, approximately 12 light-years from here. Xel stepped closer, movements deliberate. Captain Voss, the Vrexian Consortium has maintained a quarantine around former human space for centuries to contain the desolation. If the Prometheus survived, their isolation protected them. But they've now broken that isolation with this beacon. Understanding dawned. They don't know about the nanoplague's transmission vector. Correct. If they establish wide-spectrum communications with any system containing traces of the desolation, they'll be infected, Elowen finished. and humanity truly ends. Cazel's cybernetic components hummed as the archivist processed data. We cannot approach the signal source. Any Vrexian vessel would be identified as alien, potentially triggering defensive measures from survivors who may believe they are under extraterrestrial attack. Eloan lowered her weapon slowly. But the Artemis could approach unchallenged. Yes. With your chimera enhancements, you alone might survive long enough to warn them and deliver the countermeasure our scientists have developed. Zell gestured to the genetic repository. And ensure humanity's true restoration. Eloan studied, the archivist searching for deception. Why help us? What do the Vrexians gain? Cazel's reply came without hesitation. In our archive of 57,000 extinct civilizations, only humanity created the Chimera Protocol. Adaptive evolution controlled at the genetic level. Your species solved problems we have studied for millennia. The Vrexian touched the human military insignia it wore. This belonged to your Admiral Rykard, who died helping us understand the desolation. His final words were a request. If any human survives, give them a chance to bring us back. For the first time in 300 years, genuine hope filled Eloan's heart. Not just survival, but redemption. When do we leave? The Artemis disengaged from the eternal taxonomy, its ancient engines bolstered by Vrexian technology. Eloan sat at the command console, monitoring systems that blended human interface design with alien upgrades. The colony ship had been transformed into something unique, like Eloan herself. System diagnostic complete, announced the ship's AI, restored with Vrexian assistance. All functions nominal. Estimated arrival at Tau Ceti in 14 days at current velocity. Eloan reviewed the mission parameters. The Prometheus signal remained active but encoded. If these were truly human survivors, they were being cautious, as they should be. But that caution might prevent them from accepting her warning about the desolation. Begin Chimera Enhancement Phase 2, she instructed. The medical bay had been reconfigured to accelerate her protocol activation. Already her body had recovered from stasis, muscles redensified and reflexes sharpened. Phase 2 would push the enhancements further, adaptations originally designed for deep space operations. As the Artemis accelerated toward Tau Ceti, Eloan studied everything the Vrexians had compiled about humanity's fall. The desolation had begun as a military countermeasure against biological weapons, microscopic machines programmed to identify and neutralize pathogens. But the nanites evolved, developing a fundamental misidentification that classified all human, cellular structures as hostile. The results were catastrophic. Within months, Earth's population had collapsed. The colony programs already underway for decades became desperate evacuation efforts. But the nanites had infiltrated communication systems, transmitting their programming through emergency beacons and distress calls. One by one, the colonies fell. Zell had provided her with a countermeasure, a competing nanite strain developed by Vrexian scientists that could identify and neutralize the desolation without harming human tissue. If the Prometheus survivors could be inoculated before establishing broader communications, humanity might truly have a second chance. On the 7th day of her journey, the Artemis detected another signal, a faint transmission using military encryption protocols. Eloan felt a surge of anticipation as she authorized decryption. "This is Outpost Lazarus," came a distorted human voice. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself or be fired upon. This is your only warning." Eloan leaned forward. "This is Captain Eloan Voss of the Earth Alliance vessel Artemis. Authentication code Sierra Echo Victor 990. Silence stretched for long moments before the response came. Authentication recognized. Approach coordinates being transmitted. "Welcome home, Captain." Tears formed in Eloan's eyes at those simple words. Home. She had believed it lost forever. The Artemis altered course to the provided coordinates, not Tau Ceti itself, but a dwarf planet in its outer system. As they approached, sensors revealed an astonishing sight. A sprawling underground complex beneath the planet's surface, carefully shielded from detection. The landing bay that received the Artemis was unmistakably human in design. As the ship settled onto the docking platform, Elowen prepared herself for first contact with her own species after 3 centuries. The welcoming committee was heavily armed, soldiers in advanced combat suits, weapons trained on the Artemis's airlock. Elowen stepped out slowly, hands visible. "My name is Captain Elowen Voss. I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately, regarding an imminent threat to human survival." A figure stepped forward from the security team. Unlike the others, he wore no helmet, revealing a face with subtle but unmistakable alterations, the hallmarks of Chimera Protocol implementation. "Commander Orion Westlake, Defense Division," he said, studying her with intense gray eyes. "You claim to be from the Artemis, a colony ship lost over 3 centuries ago. Explain." "I was in stasis until recently," Elowen replied, "revived by the same signal that led me here. But there's something urgent you need to know before you expand communications or attempt contact with any other system." Westlake's expression remained guarded, but he nodded. "Continue." "The desolation wasn't just a biological catastrophe," Elowen explained. "It's transmissible through communication signals. If you broadcast widely, you'll trigger the dormant nanites in any system they've reached." The commander's enhanced eyes narrowed. "How do you know this?" Elowen had anticipated the question. "Because I brought the cure." That earned murmurs from the security team. Westlake studied her a moment longer, then gestured toward an interior doorway. "Welcome to Lazarus Station, Captain Voss, the last outpost of humanity, until now." Lazarus. Station hummed with activity as Elowen followed Commander Westlake through security checkpoints. The underground complex extended for kilometers beneath the dwarf planet's surface, a marvel of engineering housing approximately 12,000 humans, all descendants of the Prometheus mission. When Earth fell, the Prometheus was deploying experimental deep space communication arrays, Westlake explained as they walked. "We detected the desolation's spread pattern and went dark. Complete communications blackout. 2 generations lived and died believing we might be truly alone in the universe." They entered a vast central chamber where a holographic representation of local space rotated slowly. Scientists and military personnel worked at various stations, many turning to stare as Elowen passed. "And now?" Elowen asked. "3rd generation. Deep space telescopes confirmed the devastation across former human space, but we also detected artificial signals, non-human in origin." Westlake gestured to the holographic display, where several star systems were highlighted. "We've been monitoring alien civilizations for decades, debating whether to make contact." "The Vrexians?" Elowen nodded. "They found me in stasis aboard the Artemis." A tense silence fell across the chamber. Westlake's expression hardened. "You've had contact with alien species?" "They preserved what remained of humanity after the desolation," Elowen explained carefully, "including the genetic repository from the Artemis. Without them, I wouldn't be here with the countermeasure." Murmurs spread through the chamber. An older woman approached, her authority evident in both bearing and the deference shown by others. "Director Nysa Valerian," Westlake introduced. "Leader of Lazarus Station." Valerian's penetrating gaze assessed Elowen. "You trust these Vrexians?" "I verified their claims," Elowen replied. "They're preservationists, not conquerors. They've maintained quarantine around former human space for centuries to contain the desolation." Valerian exchanged glances with Westlake. "Our recent signal was detected by their monitoring systems," Elowen confirmed. "That's why they revived me. The nanite countermeasure they developed could protect you before you establish wider communications." Valerian gestured to a nearby scientist. "Take Captain Voss to the medical bay. I want this countermeasure analyzed immediately." Hours later, Elowen stood in Lazarus Station's central laboratory as the station's scientists confirmed the Vrexian countermeasure's efficacy. The competing nanite strain successfully neutralized samples of the desolation without harming human tissue cultures. "It's genuine," announced the lead scientist, a woman named Lyra Esker, "and beyond our current technology. These Vrexians appear to be centuries ahead of our capabilities." Director Valerian nodded slowly. Begin production and distribution immediately. As the scientist hurried to comply, Valerian turned to Elowen. It seems humanity owes both you and these aliens a debt of gratitude. There's more, Elowen said, retrieving the data crystal Kazel had provided. The complete genetic repository from the Artemis, thousands of human genetic samples preserved intact. With your cloning facilities, humanity's diversity could be restored. Westlake's eyes widened. The genetic bottleneck has been our greatest concern. 12,000 survivors cannot maintain sufficient diversity long-term. With this, Elowen said, holding up the crystal, humanity doesn't just survive, it returns in full. Valerian accepted the crystal with reverence. A second chance, truly. Later, standing at an observation window overlooking Lazarus Station's hydroponics dome, Elowen watched families going about their lives, children playing, adults working, humanity continuing despite everything. Westlake joined her, his expression thoughtful. The Council has voted to establish formal contact with the Vrexians once the countermeasure distribution is complete, he said. You'll lead the diplomatic mission. Elowen nodded. I expected nothing less. They've also approved the resurrection protocol, beginning controlled reintroduction of genetic diversity from the Artemis repository. Westlake hesitated. Our ancestors believed they were saving humanity by isolating themselves. They could never have imagined this outcome. No one could, Elowen replied. Not the extinction, not the preservation, not the resurrection. The question remains, Westlake said quietly. What happens now? We're no longer just survivors hiding, in the dark. With Vrexian technology and restored genetic diversity, humanity could reclaim its place among the stars. Elowen thought of Xel, of the 57,000 extinct civilizations in the Vrexian archives. Perhaps our place isn't what it once was. Perhaps it's something new. In the dome below, a child looked up and waved at them. Westlake waved back, a rare smile crossing his features. Something new indeed, he agreed. Welcome to the future, Captain Voss. 1 year after Elowen's arrival at Lazarus Station, the diplomatic vessel Horizon approached the Vrexian Consortium's central archive. World. The ship, built with hybrid human Vrexian technology, carried representatives from humanity's new government. The Lazarus Accord. Elowen stood on the bridge, now wearing the formal uniform of Ambassador Plenipotentiary. Beside her, Commander Westlake served as military attaché, while Director Valerian led the scientific delegation. The countermeasure had been successfully deployed throughout Lazarus Station, and the first generation of genetically diverse children from the Artemis repository had been born. Humanity was reborn, but its future remained uncertain. Approaching final coordinates, announced the pilot. Vrexian escort vessels detected. The view screen revealed an astonishing sight, a massive spherical structure orbiting a binary star system. The Vrexian archive world made Lazarus Station look primitive by comparison. Receiving transmission, the communications officer reported. Archivist Xel's image appeared on the screen. Ambassador Voss, the consortium welcomes humanity's representatives. Docking protocols are being transmitted. As the Horizon was guided to its berth, Elowen prepared the delegation for first contact. Most humans had never seen an alien before, despite a year of remote communications with the Vrexians. Remember, she cautioned, they think differently than we do. Preservation of knowledge is their highest calling. They saved what remained of humanity without expecting anything in return. Except our Chimera protocol, Westlake noted skeptically, which they could have taken from my genetic material at any time, Elowen countered. Instead, they helped us rebuild. The diplomatic party disembarked into a vast chamber designed to accommodate human physiology, atmosphere, gravity, and lighting, all calibrated for their comfort. Kazel waited with a delegation of senior Vrexian archivists. Ambassador, Kazel greeted her, mandibles clicking respectfully. You have fulfilled your mission beyond expectation. With your help, Elowen acknowledged. The Lazarus Accord extends, formal gratitude and proposes ongoing cooperation between our species. The formalities proceeded smoothly, but Elowen sensed Xel had more to share. When the initial reception concluded, the archivist requested a private meeting with the human leadership. In a secure chamber deep within the archive complex, Xel activated a holographic display unlike any Elowen had seen before. What we share now has been revealed to only 3 other species in our history, the archivist began. The Vrexian Consortium exists for one primary purpose: to prevent the cycle of extinction that has plagued our galaxy for millions of years. The hologram displayed a timeline of civilizations rising and falling across the Milky Way, thousands of species achieving spacefaring capability, then disappearing. The desolation that consumed humanity was not random, Xel continued. It follows a pattern we have documented across 17 galactic cycles. Advanced civilizations develop self-replicating technologies that eventually evolve beyond control. You're saying this has happened before, Valerian stated, her scientific mind quickly grasping the implications. Many times, Xel confirmed. The consortium was formed by survivors of previous extinction events. We preserve knowledge and genetic material, waiting for the opportunity to restore species when it is safe to do so. Westlake leaned forward. And the Chimera Protocol? Xel's compound eyes fixed on him. In 50 million years of archived history, only humanity developed genetic adaptation technology that could potentially counteract the cycle. Your species created the ability to direct your own evolution, to adapt to threats at the genetic level. The revelation stunned the human delegation. Elowen processed the implications. That's why you preserved me, not just as a specimen but as hope. Yes, Xel acknowledged. The desolation that consumed your worlds was merely one manifestation of the extinction cycle. Others will come. But with the Chimera Protocol, there might be a permanent solution for all species. Director Valerian recovered first. You want our help to save other civilizations. To break the cycle entirely, Xel corrected. The consortium proposes full partnership with humanity. Your adaptability combined with our preservation technology could ensure no more species face extinction. Elowen looked at her companions. This was far beyond the diplomatic mission they had anticipated, not just restoring humanity, but helping save the galaxy itself. We'll need to consult with the full Lazarus Accord, she said carefully. Of course, Xel agreed. But first, there is something you should see. The archivist led them deeper into the complex, to a vast chamber unlike any other. Inside, preservation fields held thousands of stasis pods, each containing living members of species long thought extinct. The repository of hope, Xel explained. When conditions are right, when it is safe, we restore what was lost. Elowen moved among the pods, marveling at the diversity of life forms. At the center of the chamber stood a new section, human stasis pods. The first volunteers from early extinction events, Xel explained, including some you might recognize. Elowen approached the indicated pod and gasped. The occupant wore the uniform of an Earth Alliance admiral, Admiral Rykard, whose insignia Xel had worn when they first met. He didn't die, she whispered. He sacrificed himself to the desolation to help us understand it, Xel corrected. His chimera enhancements kept him alive long enough to help develop the first version of the countermeasure. When his condition stabilized, we placed him in stasis until a cure could be perfected. Elowen placed her hand on the pod. With the countermeasure now proven effective, he and others can be revived, Xel confirmed. The cycle doesn't just break, Ambassador Voss. It reverses. As the implications sank in, Elowen understood her true purpose, not just as the last human soldier, but as the first of humanity's new chapter. Not conquest or mere survival, but partnership in preserving the precious diversity of galactic life. We accept your proposal, she said, making the decision that would reshape humanity's destiny. The Lazarus Accord will join the consortium. Together, we'll end the cycle of extinction. Xel's mandibles clicked in what Elowen now recognized as profound emotion. Then let us begin the Great Restoration. In the heart of the Vrexian archive world, as ancient enemies became allies and the lost were found again, the last human soldier completed her transformation. From warrior to preserver, from relic to architect of the future. Humanity would not merely survive. It would ensure that no species faced extinction alone again. The cycle was broken at last.